Hi, my name is Kayla. It is Thursday, November 9th, 2023, and I'd like to talk to you about my cancer journey. Back in June or July of 2019, I had gone almost 12 months without a period, and I was thinking I was right there at menopause and was very much looking forward to that. Um, but I got some spotting. And I didn't think anything of it at the time because I just figured it was the last gasp of my period. And, then I went on to go for over a year without anything and officially in menopause by the definition. And then last year, so August-ish of 2022, I started to get some spotting again. And spotting after menopause, any kind of bleeding after menopause is is a concern. So went to the gynecologist. She did the usual pap smear, did the ultrasound. It showed a 3 millimeter thickening in the uterus, and usually, that's usually a very clear sign of cancer, which is something I didn't really realize at the time, and I should have. I was a nurse for 27 years, and the doctors kind of should have. But when she did the pap smear, the cervical cancer came back negative. So we just thought it was an endometrial lining issue. Um, None of us thought anything of it. We weren't worried about it. Made the appointment with a surgeon for a DNC. In the meantime, my husband needed a surgery, and we decided to go ahead and put mine off because I'd already had a bunch of surgeries by that point, and let him get his done and get him recovered before I went in for the DNC to remove the endometrial lining. So we did that. So the surgery, the DNC, not really a surgery, but I was completely knocked out for it, um, was scheduled, and when I came to, my husband said, my cat is getting in the video a little bit. Say hello to Presto. Um, um, when I came to, my husband told me that the doctor told him that he thought I had cancer. That the lining and such that he pulled out, he said there was just so much of it. And he tried to get as much as he could, but it was so highly vascular, which is what the ultrasound had shown. Highly vascular is usually fibroids. That's another reason why we didn't think it was cancer. Um, so he looked at it and he said, this looks like cancer to me. And because it was so vascular, he was unable to get all of it. He told my husband that he basically just had to stop doing what he was doing. There was just way too much blood. He got, as much as he could, but he, couldn't get it all. Sent it all into pathology, and, that was that. And honestly, my first reaction was that I was upset that the doctor had told my husband that without me there to comfort my husband for hearing that. Um, Somehow I was never really afraid of the cancer. At that point, I was like, well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. They had already thought I had had cancer before in my sinuses, and it turned out not to be. Now, based on this story, I'm wondering if that was actually true. But anyway, we waited for the pathology report, and the pathology report showed positive that it was cancer. And, there were it's this type of cancer, and it's positive for these markers and not these markers. And, again, I don't think I mentioned this. This is like my third attempt at this video because my phone is too full. None of which is really relevant to this. I think I did say I was a nurse for 27 years, but not in oncology, so I didn't know all the nuances of those various things. But, I got the pathology report, and I was like, okay, so now what? And they're like, well, treatment is hysterectomy. And I was like, well, okay, fine. But again, I was never really worried about it. In fact, my DNC was on February 14th, and I kind of had a running joke that cancer was my Valentine, and I thought that was hilarious, and not everyone did. So went in well, let me back up a little bit. I stopped being able to work in January of 2020 because of a hip issue, which has yet to be resolved, and started kind of doing a deep dive in various things, and ended up following a lot of channeled work. Bashar, the Ninth Dimensional Archery and Council, primarily, a few others. And one of the things they talk about is how everything has a consciousness, and I'm telling you what I believe. Of course, you don't have to believe it or buy into it or anything. I'm just telling you what my experience was, and my experience is partially based on my beliefs. And I believe that everything has a consciousness. I have a consciousness, you have a consciousness, Presto has a consciousness of I don't like to be picked up very much. um, the trees, the mountains, the earth herself, right? Um, the the phone I'm recording this on, the table, you name it, consciousness, right? But it's not just that I have consciousness. My arm has a consciousness. My leg has a consciousness. My uterus had a consciousness, right? And if, as I've learned, we're in the process of ascending to the fifth dimension, we're in the process of transforming ourselves, doesn't it stand to reason that the microcosm and the macrocosm might be doing the same? We've seen some changes in the cosmos for sure, but the cells of my uterus each have their own consciousness, and every subcellular particle and everything. So I got this idea in my head that if we incarnated on Earth at this time to transform ourselves, then what if the cells of my uterus were doing the same thing? And they wanted to experience cancer and transform it into not cancer, I suppose. And once I got this idea in my head, I was absolutely convinced, because I thought about it, I thought about, up on the astral plane or wherever we make these plans, having a discussion with my uterus or the cells of my uterus or whatever that consciousness is. And, them saying, hey, we want to do this and we need a host, and maybe like, yeah, sure, no problem. I can do that for you. And I was convinced. So I never had an adversarial relationship with my cancer. And I think that was a huge part of it. I never said I wanted to beat the cancer or fuck cancer or all the things people say. I supported my cancer. I showered it with love. You do you. You're gonna transform, and I'm gonna play host, and you do you, and we'll do the hysterectomy, but you're doing your own thing, and because in case whatever, you still have to do the surgery, right? I also have to talk a lot about shamanism. I've been practicing shamanic work for 20 plus years, primarily for myself. I only recently started branching out into offering it to other people. And I was in a journey circle with a bunch of other people, and we worked on our cancer shamanically. I worked on it on my own. They worked on it in the circle with me. We did a lot of extensive work on it. And I think that was a huge part of it. So day of the hysterectomy comes. I forget what day it was, but I remember noticing that the astrological portents for that were all about healing. All about healing. And I felt compelled to tell my surgeon, the astrology today is all about healing, so expect miracles. And we did the surgery. It came back, we went for the follow. The pathology came back negative, everything was gotten. They did a little extra, the surgeon did a little extra searching, because apparently she saw like a little something on my bladder, so they kind of looked around that. I have an extra scar for that. But the pathology came back negative, and I didn't think anything of it. I just assumed. I was reading it through the filter of the cancer didn't escape the uterus, that it hadn't metastasized. And I wasn't really reading it with any other filter. So when I went to the follow-up appointment, the nurse practitioner was like, yeah, we think that this guy who did the DNC must have gotten it all. And I'm just kind of nodding and playing along, didn't think anything of it. But it kept sticking in my head, and I was like, wait a minute. it sounds like she was saying there. So I went and reread the pathology report, and rereading it through that filter, I realized that it said that there was zero cancer in my uterus or any of the surrounding areas. It was just gone. And that is after, the surgeon who did the D&C told my husband right after my surgery, and both of us in the follow-up appointment prior to getting referred to the oncologist. And in his notes, which are part of my file, saying that he did not get it all. Now, the nurse practitioner was like, well, he might have gotten it all and it just looked. And sure, that's possible. I have to acknowledge that. But that's not typically the way it works. From an odds standpoint, it's just as likely that, the miracle happened and the cancer was cured before the surgery as it is that, the doctor was mistaken. So I have a genuine cancer cure miracle on my hands, and it is... I haven't told very many people about it. And me putting this up on YouTube is it kills several birds with one stone, because I'm trying to move forward in this type of work. But I wanted to share it with people so that you could see that there's another way to go about it. That you could see that there's another way to interact with your cancer, and it doesn't have to be adversarial. You can have a good relationship with your cancer. I think even if it had metastasized and been, fatal, I think I would have still been pretty okay with it up to the end. It's impossible to say that, it really is. But I mean, knowing how I felt about it at the time, the positive feelings going through my body were just almost overwhelming. I just can't even describe it. I can't. But I just want to let you know that there's a different way to do it, and you don't have to be scared, and you don't have to fight with your cancer. You can work with it. You can love it to death. And I mean that in the most positive way, but yeah, it's possible. So best of luck to you all, and see you next time, whenever that is.